let's do better. How are we doing today?
Yes!
I like that. Okay. Soman Chainani is a New York Times best-selling author of the School for Good and Evil series.
Yeah.
This fairy tale saga, I have some statistics here, has sold over 3 million copies, been translated into 31 different languages, and will soon be a major motion picture. Soman is actually an executive producer of this, and this film stars Sofia Caruso and Sofia Wylie, all of which join us today to discuss the book to adaptation film. Please give it up for Soman Chainani, Sofia Caruso, and Sofia Wylie.
Oh, yes!
This is so intense. Wait, where's your mic? Are you guys sharing one?
Hello. Can you hear us? Oh.
Yes, we can hear you!
All right, hold on. Before we start, just so you guys, because later on when we do the signing, pictures are going to be a little bit more chaotic. Let's stand up so you guys can get a picture of the three of them.
Okay. Oh, I thought you were going.
All right. Can we get one more mic? Is that possible? Is there a third mic around? Otherwise, we'll take turns showing.
You guys can do all the talking.
Oh my God, we're so excited to see you guys. This is an amazing crowd. Here with the brilliant Sofia Wylie, Sofia and Caruso to talk a little bit about the School for Good and Evil series. So let me throw a question. Can I throw a hard one to start? My first question is, when you read the book and you look at it now, could you play the other part that you are playing in the movie? Sofia, could you play Sophie? And Sofia, Ann, could you play Agatha if you needed to?
I think so. We're actresses, right? So that's what we do. Yeah.
How about you?
Gosh, I don't know.
Could you turn evil and...
I would love to think I could, but seeing Sophia Ann's performance in this movie, I really can't envision anyone else doing it. I don't think I could do it justice the way you did. Like, you have so many great moments in the movie, and you're just like so Sophie. It's amazing.
This is why she's the ever, and we're both pure evil.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I can do it. I could do it like you, Sophia.
What was your first thought when you kind of read the story and were introduced sort of to the world of School for Good and Evil? What was your takeaway from it? Oh. What was your takeaway from, like, what was the impression that you were left with when you first read it?
I was in awe. I was amazed. I knew it was, I mean, I read the script for the movie before I read the books. So the first time I read the books, the first book, I stopped halfway through it, and I paused for like a month, and I reread the script, and then I went back and I finished it, because I was like, do I want to like read this and really make it what the book is? How much of it do I want to be just my own?
Yeah.
Of course I finished it, and the second book too. So yeah, I guess I was just in awe. It's pretty awesome.
How about you?
Yeah, I guess I felt the same way. I'd read the script before I'd ever read the book, but I'd had this meeting about the script, and it sounded so familiar, so I went to my Goodreads account, and I was like, okay, like, I know I have this somewhere, and I went to my, like, to-read list, and the School for Good and Evil was on there, so I was like, okay, I know why I like this script, because I'd already wanted to read this book. So then once I read the script, and I auditioned, and I got the role of Agatha, and we started pre-production in London, I read the book, and I loved it. but it's also so different than the movies, so I was starting to get really confused. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna stop here, and then if we are to get another movie, a second or a third, then I'll definitely read the second and third then.
We had all these eagle-eyed fans who figured out that you were possibly gonna get cast because you had the books on a corner bookshelf in your TikToks. So people would be like DMing, being like, why does Sofia Wylie have 1, 2, 3 on her shelf in her TikToks right when you guys are casting? And I was like,
It's so funny, it's crazy.
what, like, when you were growing up reading, what was the thing that most got you at, like, 10 to 14, kind of the middle grade age? Was there a book that sort of you got obsessed with, or a series you got obsessed with that got you into reading?
I actually hated reading. That's so weird to say in a Barnes & Noble, but like I did not set foot inside of one of these places until I was probably 13 or 14. And my friend had given me this book, and it's like this really, really depressing book, and definitely a 14-year-old should not have read it, but I did, and it affected me so much, and I realized it's actually a great book. I bought the rights to it. It's called The Fall of Innocence, and it's an incredible story, and I won't really go into it now, but it affected me so much at such a young age that I realized that books have so much power in them, and that you can create this whole world inside of your head. And so from that point on, I was just obsessed, especially during quarantine when I really didn't have much else to do. I read, I think, of around like 25 books during that like 5-month period. And it allowed me to escape into this world where I could do anything and be anyone and look like anything as well. I didn't have to just be me. And so I'm very thankful to books because of that, because I think it has allowed my childlike imagination to prosper throughout like my young adulthood. Yeah.
How about you?
I've always been a reader. See what I did there? I've always been a reader. Thinking back on what I read when I was younger, I was trying to think of like a YA book or a fantasy book. I'm like, well, what was I reading? I was reading like classics. I was reading like Jane Eyre and stuff like that. So I've always been a reader. Sofia Wylie, it's funny though, because on set I'm always the one sleeping, and she's always the one reading. So it's funny to hear you say that you didn't like to read, because all she does is read on set. She's just always reading. So I don't know, I kind of started with like classics, like Jane Eyre, and I read a lot of poetry.
Well, you guys are young enough also where I feel like you grew up in an era where YA was cool, or not necessarily cool, but existed. Like, Potter, Twilight, Hunger Games, like all
yeah,
of those
I read
things
all
were
those
coming out.
Twilight books.
When I was growing up, there was none of that
surprise
stuff.
there.
You know what I mean? Like, there was nothing. Like, I got obsessed with Twilight when I was like 29. But,
Oh my god.
Team Edward. But,
Oh god. Jesus.
but when I was growing up, like, you either read sort of kids' books and then you jumped to adult. So that was our only option, which is why I think when I write, it tends to be a little more edgy and aggressive and provocative, because I always felt like, as a kid, I was always trying to read up. I was always trying to read older than,
Ew. I
you know?
would steal my sister's Twilight books.
Oh, see, I was worse than that. I would come to, should I tell this story?
Tell it.
Okay, so there was no Barnes & Noble, well, there maybe was, but Borders was the big store back then. So I used to sneak in and go to the Anne Rice section, and Anne Rice used to write erotica before she was Anne Rice. And I would sit there at 13 and take all the erotica books and then just hide in another corner and just be like, and my mom's like, when are you coming home? I'm like, never.
Oh my
Oh,
god.
I love that.
Anyway, it explains a lot about my work. But when you were, the other question I had was, I remember when I first published the book, the publisher was like, kids from 10 to 14 don't want to read about romance necessarily. They're more interested in, identity stories and adventure and all those sorts of things. When did you start, like, in storytelling, looking for romantic interests? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, how early were you, like, looking for stories that had, like, the hunky prince or whatever it was? Or, like, who was your first sort of literary crush, I guess is what I'm asking.
I don't know when I started I don't think I've ever been looking for the hunky prince in my books, so I'm gonna let Sophia answer that.
That was me. But, like, who was your first literary crush?
Ooh, I I grew up like never having crushes on people, and I always felt really weird for that. And my friends would be like, "Oh my gosh, isn't Jared so cute?" And I was like, "I don't know." Like I wasn't really thinking about it. But then when I started to read books, I was like, "Oh." Literally, and it's created this like fantasy and expectation in my mind now. And so when I talk to real boys, I'm like, "Oh." I know she's always like, "Who do you have a crush on?" I'm like, "No one." Like, no one lives up to the people in the books. Yeah.
So who? Give us some names. We need some of these guys.
Have you guys read Six of Crows?
Yes! Right here!
So honestly, I'm blanking on every single character's name right now, but okay, who is the main dude?
Cass!
Yes! I loved Kaz, and I loved, is her name Inej?
Inej, yes.
I love them together, and I definitely casted myself as her in my head. And then
Oh,
when the show
yeah.
came out on Netflix, I was like, dang it, it's not me! But definitely that one for sure.
Well, let me make your dreams come true because Lee Bardugo is coming to the premiere on Tuesday, so she's gonna be there. We're gonna have a Scuba Evil Shadow and Berlin crossover moment.
Cut to me like on my knees begging her to cast me in the next season. Crazy.
Yeah. So that'll be a little wish fulfillment. How about for you? Give us your literary crush.
My literary crush? I guess if I had to pick like a YA literary crush, I'd just say Edward for sure. Like I would sit there with those Twilight books. Like,
Oh, was anyone actually Team Jacob? Like, were there Team Jacob people?
yes.
Who here was Team Jacob at some point in their life?
One.
Oh, there.
Go. I like that for you. Okay, there's a few. All right.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm trying to think of who else.
I'm down. I'm down with that.
No, because it was always like just always people like Interview with a Vampire and stuff like that. That was always reading.
Like even the name Edward. It's so moody.
In terms of when you're sort of looking at how to, take a character and bring it to life, how much of it do you bring from your own, sort of person? Like, when you're reading a script for the first time, are you trying to invent something completely new? Are you trying to find something inside yourself? How do you sort of first approach a character when you're reading a new piece of material?
I think it's just whatever my first natural interpretation is of it. I'm not trying to be what I read in the book. This is why I stopped halfway through the book. I was like, I'm not putting this on. Like what I bring to the character is what Paul and everybody, why they picked me for this role, and that's what I gave before I even read the books. So I tried to keep it true to what had initially come up for me, and then paint it with little colors of what was in the book.
And what was your impression of Sophie to begin with?
That sounds a lot like me.
How about you? What was your impression of Agatha when you first read her?
I was like, oh, she's really moody. And I think my favorite thing when I'm reading a book or reading a script, and it indicates whether the character is very well-rounded, is whether I can completely envision myself as that person. And so when then I start to film and I'm becoming that person, it feels so natural and easy because I've already in my head kind of gone through their life as myself, but a different version of me. Because characters that are great are so complex and they're not one-dimensional. They have so many layers, and I feel like for both Sophie and Agatha, they do have a lot of great layers that we can really incorporate different parts of ourselves into, even though we aren't necessarily completely those characters. Agatha might be very different than myself. I'm a big pink person, and Agatha is not. And I would say I can be quite bubbly at moments, but there's also so many similarities within growing up and feeling so different than everyone else that you're around, and that being a negative thing. I definitely related to Agatha in that way, and it allowed me to empathize with her and to justify her reactions to things, because now I understand her and understand why she does what she does.
Well, it's also interesting because when I was creating Agatha and Sophie, I thought of them as two halves of the same whole, in that Agatha wants to have that sort of access to the self-esteem and the self-confidence and the feeling of being beautiful that she feels everybody in these stories has that she's never had, right? So she goes into school for good and she sees all these people who have this inner belief that she doesn't have, right? Sophie, meanwhile, has that inner belief to the extreme, but that then corrupts her. So you'll have someone who feels like they don't have any of it and someone who has too much of it. And together they like form this kind of balance. So when you were looking at Agatha, because you are so kind of optimistic and, you know, really see the bright side of things, how did you get into that sort of moody graveyard girl place without, like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that's a tough thing.
I think if you could see me in my room, you'd be like, oh yeah, this makes sense. She's like Agatha, because I don't always have like so much positivity. I think that's the way I want to live, so I project that. But of course, there are so many moments where I just feel so alone, or I feel no. Right. It's like, it's just, I think, how everyone can feel growing up. Growing up is just a very isolating experience, even though we're all going through it at the exact same time. And so for Agatha, I think I was just able to take a lot of myself into that, and yeah, it was almost like taking the saddest, most insecure parts of me and allowing those to surface, which is quite odd to do because usually we suppress them and try to hide it. But it was like very therapeutic in a way because I was able to just be those emotions rather than hiding them.
And then you have to be able to play that sort of ultra confidence, but at the same time, I feel like Sophie has that kind of deep insecurity there. Like that's at the basis of the character, yeah? So what was your sort of approach there? Because you really do pull it off. You pull off that sort of like beautiful balance. And so Sophie, in a lot of ways, I remember when I was, you know, writing it over 10 years, I always felt like it was an unplayable part. Like it was not castable. Because how do you play sort of a young Madonna who is a narcissistic monster, but also like the coolest, like, you know, person you want to hang out with, and someone who's kind of brings the fun to the books. Like I remember we did a poll after the first book, and everyone was like, she was everyone's least favorite character, and they all wanted her to die. I used to get all these messages being like, please kill Sophie, blah, blah, blah. We did the same poll after book 5, and she was the most popular character in the series. And she hadn't changed. There was nothing in her arc that made her a better person. At no point does she grow into something, you know, with a conscience or anything like that. It's just that people got used to her, and people started to realize that, like, you know, she had her own positive qualities in her own way, you know.
And
so,
she's everybody's favorite demon.
Yeah. What were some of the things that like you liked most about playing her, or some secrets that, you know, we might not pick up just by watching you play her on screen, in terms of how you approached it?
Well, in terms of how I approached it, I guess at times I kind of just let myself off the hinges a little. While still being nice to work with. But you know, like when I'm in it, I think it's just like, I don't know.
Was there a scene in particular where you felt really in it? Where you like literally felt like you had gone to the other side?
Yeah, the scene where, well, you'll see it in a few days if you're gonna watch the film. So there's a scene where I burst through these doors, and it's just as I'm starting to become a witch in the face. And I have this, you know, veil on, and I burst through these doors, and there's this really intense music, and I just sort of like slowly walk down the way. And I just hold all of the power in the scene, and I'm like grabbing Tedra's face, and I'm just saying really mean stuff to her. And that particular day, I was just really in it. I was just really feeling it.
The way that you said her name, Agatha.
Agatha. Yeah. I think I was pretty in it that day. I was having a good time. But it's all fun. Yeah.
In terms of just, I mean, one of the most important things, if you think about the characters in this movie, obviously you have Sophie, Agatha, Tedros, but you also have the friendship between Sophie and Agatha. You have that, you know, you need that chemistry between the two of you. Did you feel like as the movie went on, you sort of developed your own kind of Sophie Agatha friendship? So two-part question. Did you develop your own sort of chemistry with Sophie Agatha friendship? And do you have any Sophie Agatha friendships in your own life where you are one or the other in that sort of duo?
I think Sophie and I have a pretty good friendship. I wouldn't say we're like Sophie and Agatha with each other. I think we're just pretty good friends. I think we're pretty balanced. I don't think you know what? That's a lie. I'm absolutely the Sophie to a lot of friendships in my life by accident, but I think I'm also the Agatha. I don't know.
Thinking of some of your friends, I feel like there are a couple of them where I feel like you have like Sophie, Agatha. No.
All right.
Yeah. How about you, Sophie?
I mean, I do have two of my closest friends in this front row right here, Katie and Cozy, which they came from Nashville. So they're all the way here from there. I love you guys. I don't think I would describe our friendship as Sophie Agatha-ish at all, but I guess like the bond and closeness that Agatha and Sophie feel for one another, where it's like this sisterhood rather than this acquaintanceship. That's how I feel with you guys. Just because there's something about the way you guys are as people that I admire and I want to be like, and so being around you makes me feel better about who I'm becoming. And so I think that's just like it's such a beautiful thing about friendship, is it can be so strong, and this bond that you really can't describe, like a sisterhood. And then the same with my actual sister Isabella. She is 2 years older than me. She's in college right now. And I've always looked up to her so much, and I think that no matter what, even if we're like screaming at each other or like fake punching, definitely not real punching, we like still love each other no matter what. And I think the same goes for Sophie and Agatha, that they go through so much throughout the books, but no matter what, they always prevail. Like their friendship is the strongest element.
You know, because I kept thinking about when I was in high school, where the sort of genesis of the story I think often came from was, I would see like two girls together. I remember there was a girl named Stacy and Alyssa, and they were known, you know, as Alyssa, and they were just sort of like, they were their own ship, and they were always together. You know, you never saw them apart. They were always together. You know, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, and then 8th grade, Stacy met Corey, right? And all of a sudden you have that interloper, you have the Tedros who sort of like comes in, and all of a sudden Stacy and Alyssa can't get back to where they were. Like the dynamics change. Like no matter how much Stacy tries to like spend time with her, they can't fix it. And so I'm just curious also in your own life whether you've seen, regardless of gender, whether you've seen when you have like a best friend, can that hold on forever before there's like the snake in the garden? Do you know what I mean? Like someone who comes in and sort of interrupts it.
Usually friendships last longer than relationships. And I've been a part of many friendships where that friend has ditched me for that relationship, and it sucks. So I vowed, I was like, okay, the day that I get into a relationship, I am not going to ditch my friends, because it is it's horrible. But then I got into a relationship and I ditched all of my friends. They were like, where are you? Like FaceTiming me, texting me, and there's something so intoxicating about maybe not necessarily being in love, but feeling as though love is an element in your life, even if you're not quite there yet. And so I definitely now, kind of growing past certain things, I've realized how much stronger a friendship love can be than certain like romantic loves. And I will definitely hold on to that and know that moving forward, when I enter another relationship, I will try and prioritize those friendships, because they were there before any of like the flirtation. Like there's something so, I don't know, like manipulative sometimes about romance, where it's always this like give and take. But with friendships, it's kind of just give and give and give. So yeah, I guess I'm just saying, like, I think friendships should be valued much more than they are, but it's kind of hard to when you're like so encapsulated with something else.
So you vow to correct a mistake. I feel like we just make the mistake over and over again.
No, I don't think so. I was gonna say there's other snakes. There's other versions of what Tedros is. There's other distractions, like career or whatever your other important thing is. It's going to get in the way of your friendships. But yeah, the point is that the friendships really do outlive the relationships, and gotta keep those friends by your side. They're the best. That's what the books are all about. I have all my girlfriends, actually. I don't have any boys coming to this premiere. I got all my girlfriends to come. I got like 6 of my best friends to come with me. And I think that's what the movie's about, a lot of it, so it's important.
Well, because I always felt like, when I was writing the books, I felt like, you had that sort of crack between them, and then the rest of the 3,800 pages was about them trying to get back to the beginning. This idea of like, that childhood innocence of 2 girls, were more than ride or die, more than sisters. They were the deepest possible love that existed because there was no agenda. It was just purely based on 2 souls melding, right? How do you get back to that after you grow up? You know what I mean? And I think it's also why I think a lot of adults have trouble, making friends later, because once you have the taste of real friendship when you're younger, you're sort of like trying to find your way back to that, but you don't know how to get there anymore. And I feel like that was the journey of the 6 books, was how do we get back to the beginning? How do we get back to what we once had? And that's why I always love hanging out with you guys, because it's nice to hear like that you guys understand that at a young age, All right, let's lighten things up. What was your opinion of Tedros on the page, both script and before, when you first read it? Like, what was your takeaway? Because people either think he's like the hottest person in the world and want to marry him, or they really think he's like the worst.
So unattractive. So unattractive to me. I was like, oh, this guy. Of course, it's this guy, this kind of guy who's gonna ruin their friendship. Of course it is. So that's what I thought of him.
How about you, Sophie? Speaking of which, my favorite line in the whole movie is when Tedros makes his entrance. You just cut to Hort and he goes, "Oh no." It's just like, voicing like what everyone thinks. How about you? What was your opinion?
I definitely, reading the books, was like, why? Why does Sophie like this boy? And I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, Soman, but Agatha really doesn't like Tedros in the first
beginning,
book.
yeah.
Yeah, especially at the beginning.
No.
But
I think she's anti-boy. Also, she just is like. It's funny because whenever you talk about your relationships to like no crushes, you didn't like anyone, you were only into the guys in books and stuff. That's Agatha, right? She was hiding in the book. She was hiding fairy tales under her bed. Like, she was like secretly dreaming of this stuff, but her outward thing was no boys, there's no happily ever after, there's no romance, everything that Sophie stands for is stupid. So, it doesn't exist. So yeah, she would never have admitted it, at least.
Yeah, for sure. And I definitely, seeing their interactions in the book, I was like, oh yeah, they're definitely not gonna be a thing. But they did become a thing. And same with the movies. I think there's definitely there's much more sweetness to their interactions in the movies, which I think is quite vital because as the audience you want to root for whatever ship there is. So yeah, I think Jamie Flatters, who plays Tedros, did such a wonderful job with bringing the Tedros you see in the books to life, but also making him much more well-rounded and human. I root for him and I want him to survive, and he almost dies 5 times in the movie, but I don't know, I guess everyone here knows what's gonna happen, so yeah, he doesn't die, but I'm glad he doesn't because he is a character that I love, and I think Jamie really just did such a wonderful job with playing him.
Because I think also what's funny is when you watch these when I was growing up, I was watching these Disney movies, and the prince would always come and sort of take the princess away at the end of it, and I always felt like, if you had these 2 female characters together, and their friendship was number 1, you wanted a guy that was physically attractive and kind of charming enough that you would get sort of lured in that direction, but ultimately you wouldn't root for him to be with the girl. You know what I mean? Because otherwise, then you really can have sort of split opinions. And I think that's what, Tedros on screen and on the pages, that's his role. But as the books go on, I feel like that's where, we'll hear from readers in a bit, but I feel like they start to root more and more for Agatha and Tedros' relationship, and there really becomes this conflict over whether Agatha and Sophie should end up back together, or whether Agatha and Tedros should end up together forever, and what happens to Sophie, is she the third wheel, all those questions, which is what happens in real life, right? Because at some point, have to grow up, and then what happens? What happens to you? You know? All right, let me just make sure we're on time, and then we'll get to audience questions in a little bit. We have a few more minutes, so I can ask you a few more questions.
I do have a question for you. What is your favorite out of all the books that you wrote for the series?
Let's see, out of 6. I mean, I think each one had a different place. I think with the first one, I just felt so free because I never thought it necessarily was going to see the light of day or people were going to read it, and so it really felt very personal. I felt like that's where it almost felt like a diary. I was writing a book that I would have wanted to read when I was young with no restrictions. And I remember with the publisher being like, there were all these rules she was giving me, like you can't have romance. Like at one point she told me there was a scene in the book where Hort and Sophie takes Hort's room for the night, basically kicks him out of his own room and is like, this is not my room. And, which would have been hilarious in the movie. But, and he ends up in the room for the night too. And they were like, we can't publish this because you can't have a guy and a girl at that age cohabit in the same room. And I said, all right, I will solve this problem for you. So Hort goes to Sophie in the middle of the scene. You can't sleep in my room. We're not allowed to cohabit in the same room. And she goes, I don't follow rules I didn't make. And then that's it. And so that was it. And so that's how I solved any problem. Like when they turn into animals in the book, anytime they turn back to human, they were like, oh, they need to have little booty shorts or something like in Twilight. And I was like, if you are a human and you turn into like a bird or a bear, what happens to your clothes? They're gone. They're somewhere else. So they were like, so I was like, they're just not gonna have clothes. And I come back and then they have to deal with that. That's a problem they have to deal with. It's the cost of turning into an animal. They didn't want to go. Like, so all those things, but because it was my first book and there was no kind of, you know, I didn't have any sort of knowledge of any of this stuff. I just fought for everything. It was like, I just want it the way it is. And I think that that's ultimately what made it different, probably. But I think the third and the sixth are probably the two that stand out because they were the ends of the trilogies, and I felt like everything came together in those two books, you know, the way I sort of wanted to do it. I also think that 1, 2, 3 were the school years, kind of like Harry Potter-esque, you're at the school. And I felt like when I finished Potter, and I'm curious to hear your reaction to Potter versus this, which is when I finished Potter, I felt like, okay, they learned all this magic and all this awesome stuff at the school, but now what? What happens now? Like we want to see them in the world. And so I wanted to do 4 through 6 where they actually had to, you know, Agatha and Tedros had to rule Camelot together, and what would happen, you know? And what would happen to Sophie, like graduating school and now having to be in charge of the school she once terrorized. So I wanted to like play with them growing up and turning into adults. And I think those were really special books to me too. So, you know, 3 and 6 probably because those were like the finales of the vision. But I'm curious because you grew up reading Potter and then now you read this. What was your takeaway in terms of like how they compared, how you felt, you know, in the difference from them? Because then I can sort of tell you a little bit more about what my thought process was.
Please don't hate me for this. I did not read any of the Harry Potter books.
Ever?
I didn't either. You can hate us both.
Neither of you?
What the?
That is wild. How many of you have read the Harry Potter books?
Oh my god.
Wait, so tell us why you didn't. I'm so curious.
Well, because when they came out, I was at that age where I just didn't really like books yet. And then I had already seen the movies by the time I started reading books. So going back and reading a book to a movie that I've seen is really hard for me because I want to be guessing of what's going to happen next. And with all the Harry Potter movies, I've seen them probably dozens of times, so I know exactly what's going to happen. So I just never ended up getting to them. I did read the first one, so yeah, I guess I have read 1, but I just couldn't do it. And it's such a great book too, which makes me so sad, but I just really enjoyed the movies, so I stuck with them.
What house are you? Well, I guess what house you were, because I think I gave you a present for your house.
Yeah, you did.
What house do we think Sophia
what
is
do you
in?
think I am?
Okay, how many of you think? Oh, well, there you go. There you go. Everyone knew.
Slytherin?
Why do you guys think I'm a Hufflepuff? Okay. You guys are right.
It's kind of
Okay.
Oh.
I took the test 3 times because I was like, it's wrong. And so I took it the second time as a Gryffindor. I was like, okay, I'm gonna be brave. I'm gonna answer these questions like a Gryffindor would. Still got Hufflepuff. The third time I was like, come on, like maybe I'll get Slytherin this time. Like I'll just go crazy. Still got Hufflepuff. Like I don't know why. And yes, there's nothing wrong with Hufflepuff. Lindsay right here. We're both in the same boat, but I want to be cool.
It's so funny because I went to I was making you a little backpack and I went to the Harry Potter store and I was trying to figure out and I was like, am I really gonna bet so hard that she's a Hufflepuff? Like, couldn't there be a possibility that she's in another, could she be a split house? Could she, and I was like, no. All right, and what house is Caruso in?
Yeah, you guys guessed right.
I knew it!
Yeah, I guess I'm a Slytherin. You gave me that backpack and I was kind of like, you're a Slytherin, really? Like, and then I was like, yeah, I can't deny this. This is the way it is. I'm a Slytherin. But Sophia being a Hufflepuff is actually like, I kind of wish I was sometimes as nice as Sophia, which is also like what she brings to Agatha. She's like the heart of the movie. She's just like the heart. It's the only way I can like describe her performance well. Is she's the heart of the movie. So her being a Hufflepuff actually is really cool because you're so sweet and nice. I didn't grow up reading the Harry Potter books because, like I mentioned, I was reading like Jane Eyre and I Captured the Castle and like other stuff.
I Capture the Castle is a masterpiece.
It's so
one of the
good.
best books ever.
It's so good. I was reading that kind of stuff. I'm like,
Interestingly, it's J.K. Rowling's favorite book.
really?
Yeah.
Huh. Huh. Well, okay. So that's why I wasn't reading Harry Potter,
Yeah.
and yeah, I'm a Slytherin. So.
I read it, I think I was 22, 23, and I remember reading it thinking, why isn't this book about the Slytherin kids? Because like, to me, like, they had so much more complexity and interesting things going on and a lot more backstories that I thought would have been more fun to explore. And I feel like that was the seed. Like, because in my head I was like, if we could follow the Gryffindor kids at the same time as the Slytherin kids, we would have a much more balanced story. And then, like, ultimately, we wouldn't know if Voldemort or Harry was going to win because we would be watching it from both sides. So we would be, you know, everyone would be rooting for Draco as much as they were for Harry, or at least some of us would, right? And so someone would be rooting for Draco, some for Harry, and then you'd end up with this really complicated, you know, story. And I think that was really part of the seed, you know. That, and I think I wrote my thesis in college on the novel Wicked, not the musical. Before the musical got made. The book is totally different. Yeah, and it's wildly different, right? Completely different. And so I feel like that combination of reading the novel Wicked and reading Potter and seeing there was like room for something different, you know, was a big deal. And the only thing that was interesting was when I started writing it, there were 7 other fairy tale school books coming out at the same time. And Descendants was getting made around that time. And it was like having to figure out like, okay, like can I find a lane? And I think the lane was just that the evil kids were treated as protagonists just as much as, you know, the heroes, and ultimately it was up to the audience to decide. So speaking of the audience, I know you guys have a ton of questions. So let's go to some questions and we will be game to answer them. All right, so yeah, let's start with you.
Was this because of raising my hand?
So she asked, after I finished the books, is there anything I regretted or wanted to change, and is there something that I wanted to change for the movie? So early on, so it was in development for about 10 years before, you know, Paul sort of saved us and came on and got it made. And before that, it was sort of, you know, it was a long process to get the script where it was. But early on, I remember saying that the gargoyle scene in the book was, for those of you who've read it, there's a gargoyle that's on the castle, sort of, you know, terrorizing the kids, but we realize that he's actually a former student that has now been turned into a gargoyle as punishment. And I thought, I wish that kid had a face, that we knew who that character was. And so in the script, we created a character named Gregor because his name was similar to Gargoyle.
Oh, I didn't know that's what that was about.
Which became the face of kids who, you know, had been turned into something. So that was one thing where there was an opportunity, you know. But otherwise, I felt like when I wrote each book, I was so in it. I was so like deep into the story, and they're so complicated. For those of you who've read the books, you know how it is. There's 160 characters in The School for Good and Evil. Every book has like 30 plot lines, and they're insane. Like I look at them now and I'm just thinking, how did I do it? Because they're so crazy. But I think each time when I was done with it, I was done with it. and then I would go to the next. And so I never had any regrets, other than there are a couple times where I ran out of time. And so what I would do is end the book a little early, and then the beginning of the next book should have been the ending. So the first 2 chapters of 5 should have been the end of 4, and so, like, same with 2 and 3. But otherwise, no, probably not. What else? Yeah, you're right there.
So I love all 6 books. I'm not sure if all the actors read all 6 books, but I'm generally curious to see what scene would you want to see adapted to the screen, and hopefully we get all 6. I don't know, but what scene would you want to see adapted to the screen?
Oh, let me think. Do you have any scene in the book that you felt like you wish was still in the movie or something like that? I'm trying to think if there's a scene from a future book that I would really love to see. I mean,
I have one.
Yeah, tell me.
I read the first 2 books, or 1 3/4.
Yeah.
The second book, the scene in the second book where they're on the train,
Oh,
that
was
is
awesome.
so visual in my head. It's like, it's so
called-
visual in my head that it just feels like it has to be in the movie. So if we do end up making 2 and 3, that would be kind of cool.
Yeah, because it's the flower ground is so expensive to make that it probably would cost an entire movie.
It probably. Wow, I really just picked like the most complex thing.
Yeah, it's an underground subway system made entirely out of flowers, so it's just like insane. But yeah, that's where Tedros and all the boys are sort of coming after you guys on the subway, which would be amazing. I think also the one I really think about is you getting to spend a good chunk of the second movie as a boy, because I just think that would be awesome. Like
Well,
I
I
think.
was also gonna say that.
Yeah, as Philip in the second book, because I just think, like,
That would be
could you
so-
do it?
Could I do it?
No, just like I'm like taking a good look. I
What
think
do
so.
you think?
I think so.
I can do it.
You can do anything. No, I'm just. I think you could. You could pass.
Why are we still on this? I answered this. I could do it, absolutely.
How about you, Sophia? Any other scenes that,
makeup.
that you remember?
Sorry. I was gonna say the same thing that you, or the same thing you said, because I had read a portion of the second book, and I thought that scene was so visual and so cool, and I was like, how would they make this into something? But I mean, after watching this first movie, I think they could really do anything. Yeah, it's so beautiful.
Yeah,
So
that way also just all the loves to use practical effects on everything, so it wouldn't just be a scene. It would be awesome, but it would be very expensive. Which means all of you better see the first one. All right, what else? Yeah, you're right here in the glasses.
So for me, the turning point from where I liked Sophie, or sorry, I disliked Sophie to liking her,
Yeah.
was a chapter with the Beast.
Wait, chapter with the wit? Which one?
Chapter with the Beast.
Yeah.
And so how she becomes evil because of like self-defense.
Yeah.
So when you were writing that chapter, did you find it difficult because it is such a interesting moment?
That chapter was interesting because it's dark. You know, you have Sophie committing murder for the first time. But I thought there's stuff many times, oh my God, in this series. I felt like I would put myself in Sophie's shoes often, and I felt like if you're in this dungeon where the beast's job is to find your greatest fear, and they find it, I always think about, like, you know how sometimes, this is such an esoteric thing, but tell me if you understand. When you have like a personal fear of yourself, but you don't feel like other people notice it, and when they actually do see it in yourself, like they call you on something that you think is your secret, like your little, like, you know, secret flaw, and they actually call you on it, you feel this like rage, both at yourself and at them for finding out, like somehow they found it, and you want them dead. And I feel like that's what, in that moment, you know, and I feel like that's what the beast represents. The beast represents finding that fear you're trying to hide. And so when she kills him, I think everyone gets this unconscious sort of little burst of relief that that one person who knew your secret is gone, you know? It's very House of...
Say I can relate. It's kind of like when you're in therapy and they tell you something you don't want to hear. You're like, oh. Yeah, it's that. It's just like, it's that scene. Yeah.
What else? Hold on, let's see. You right here. Yeah. And then we got one from the back. Oh yeah, tell us.
If you guys wanted to play any other characters
If we wanted to play any other characters, what?
besides Sophie.
Oh, are there any other characters you would have liked to play? Now that you like know everybody, is there anyone that you were like, okay, I couldn't play Sophia Agatha, who would I have liked to play? That's a good question.
I think I would like to play, oh my gosh, either Hester or Kiko.
Those are the most opposite characters in the history of
Okay, so Emma plays Kiko, and in the movie, she is the most cute thing ever. And like, she always has the highest pitched voice, and every time she comes on screen, I just want to cry out of joy because she's just so happy. But then Hester is so cool. Like, that's how I want to be, just like a demon tattoo on my back, and like it comes alive, and like how cool is that? But I don't know if I could play Hester. I think in my head I would love to be a Hester.
Hester was my desire to create a character that had no vulnerability. Like the person you wish you could be in high school was Hester.
Yeah. Yet Freya brings so much
Oh
vulnerability.
my god, she's so scary.
Yeah.
Super scary.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I'm gonna have to say Yuba.
Oh god.
I would love to play Yuba. There's a part where he comes out of a tree, and it actually might be one of my favorite parts of the whole movie. It makes me laugh so hard.
I'm trying to picture you as a garden. Now, if I challenge your acting chops, you're gonna throw me out the
Hey,
window.
you've already done that twice now, man. Strike two.
Okay, Sophie the gnome. All right, what else? Let's get one from the back. You in the striped shirt back there.
So we talked about what both of you guys are.
Oh god, you gotta yell your question. Do you want to stand up and just yell it really loud?
So you guys talked about what both of you guys would be in the Harry Potter houses. What about you? Harry Potter house.
Oh, what do you think my Harry Potter house is? No.
So,
100% Slytherin. No. Have you ever seen us hang out together? We're just sort of sitting there with these like snake eyes.
yeah. We're the,
The two of us hang out together is terrible. That happens way too often. Way too often for the world to stand much longer without rolling off its axis. All right. Let me think. Yeah, you're ready.
what I wish I had?
Oh, what is one aspect of their characters that they wish they had in their real life persona? Part of Agatha that you want to take from the movie now into your life.
I just really feel like I'm her, kind of, so.
That's a good question.
A really good question.
I feel like if I was to take a character, I wanted Tedros's blind confidence in himself. I feel like he just goes head rushing into any situation, being like, I know how to handle this, and he has no clue, but he thinks he does. And I feel like that's such a boy thing, and I think I always grew up being very jealous of guys who were so comfortable, just sort of walking into any room. You know those guys in high school who sort of walk in, the TikTok boys, and they're like, whatever, I can make a crappy dance video, and I think it's the greatest thing in the world. And then it somehow gets like 2 million views because I don't know why, but it's that. I wish I had that.
I think I strive to have what Sophie has, and I think I sometimes achieve it. Like I'm thinking about when Lady Lesso takes her hair, and that is like her everything. Like her physical beauty is her everything, and that's taken from her. She's just like, crap, this is the word. But she turns it around, and she walks in, and she's rocking it. She's like, all right, you're gonna take my hair? Fine. Look at me. Look at me now. Like, I want that. And I try to have that, I think.
It's funny, we each want the same thing. Oh, we each want the same thing, but one from Tedros. I want it from Tedros, you want it from Sophie.
Are we all gonna share one mic now? Okay, I'll answer the question. I think for me, I would love to acquire Agatha's dryness and sarcasm. I get so nervous making jokes or like being dry or like sassy because I'm like, oh, don't think I'm mean. So I'll like start laughing before the joke's over and then like, ah, it's fine, right? I just feel like so awkward. So I'd love to be able to just be so confident in myself and in my sarcasm, just like stare someone deadpan in the eye and be like, yeah, this is a joke and you know it, but I don't need to explain it further.
All right, I love that we all want confidence. Okay, let's go to you in the pink in the corner over there.
Hi. My question is for you, Soman,
Yeah.
and to reference Harry Potter for a second. One of the things that J.K. Rowling always said is that she pictured Robbie Coltrane for Hagrid, rest in peace, and he was who she wanted.
Oh yeah.
For the adult actors, because in the film, you literally have some of the most famous names of like our generation.
Yeah.
Was any of them an actor who you pictured for years being that character, and did you get to be a part of their casting?
It's
What was that
funny
like?
because I don't write from a place of picturing faces. Like I don't have this very like specific human in my mind, and that's why when you see all our official art, it often changes depending on the artist, because I feel the character's energy. Like I feel each character is a different color finger glow, which is why they have the different colors in the book, because I could feel their energy of what they were, and that's why Tedros and Agatha kind of had that similar but not quite the same glow. And so for me, it was about like writing their energy. And occasionally I would see an actress or an actor on screen and feel like, oh, like they have that thing. Like I remember when I first was writing, it was 2012, and I thought that, do you know the actress Saoirse Ronan?
Yeah.
Yes,
I
yes.
remember watching her and being like, she's very Agatha. Like she has that sort of like, kind of like off quality, you know? So I remember thinking that she had something to her that was, you know, this was long, you know, a while ago when I was first writing it. So things like that where I would sort of feel it in someone. But I never had like a dream cast or anything like that, you know? Because then ultimately I think that limits it. Like to me, it has to be an invented character and an invented feeling. Otherwise you're basing it on someone who exists, which I was not so into, you know? Good question. All right, a couple more and then we'll go. You in the glasses back there. Just stand up and yell really loud. Yeah.
Okay. So I was rereading Hunger Games, and I noticed that the characters Castor and Pollock.
Yeah.
Was that like inspiration for the?
Oh, not at all. No, I didn't read Mockingjay until probably book 3 or 4. I based it on the constellation because I wanted the twins, and I love the idea of Castor and Pollock as twins. Who are not in the movie because that again would have taken the entire budget of the film. Because to make those kind of, it's just you want to put your money where it's important, you know. So that they were never in any version of the script ever, because it's just too expensive. Yeah, there were things that were more important. So, what else? Yeah, you right here with the wristbands. Yeah.
Since you guys have all read the first book, what was your favorite book scene versus movie scene?
Oh, interesting. Book theme versus movie theme?
Book scene versus the movie
Oh, scene. Book scene versus movie scene. Oh, interesting. Anything jump off to you guys? Do you want me to take this one to save you? Let me think. I will say, in terms of where it really gels perfectly, is in terms of where like they both have this perfect synergy, is when the girls get dropped into schools. It's this like a hair-raising chills moment that like it just gets that feeling that you guys had when you first read that first book. Remember when they get dropped into schools? It's on page 26, and you're just like, I remember writing it and being like, whoa, like what? Like it's that moment. I feel like on screen you get that same like, you know, and it's just perfect the way Paul did it. So I feel like it gives you that feeling. I think, you know, there's scenes that you just can't do because it's so expensive or it doesn't make sense. Like I love the foxes scene in the book because I think it's so creepy and weird, and I get weird DMs from furries every once in a while. But you know, you wouldn't do that in the movie because you have two amazing actresses. Why would you turn them into foxes? Do you know what I mean? And why would you turn Agatha into a cockroach for 10 chapters? So remember, she gets turned into a bug for a very long time. So again, why would you waste precious screen time with something? her is a bug. So stuff like that. When the other thing is School for Evil really, because it takes place in such a fantasy world, there's so much that happens in that book. That could fill 20 movies easily and a $1 trillion budget. So you do have to make those choices. So, yeah.
I guess from the book, one of the scenes I really love is the beautiful all along, Agatha, you've been beautiful all along scene between Debbie and Agatha. I thought that scene was really nice just because of the fact that we all have this perception of ourselves that is so based in everyone else's perception of us and the way that they treat us. And then the instant we think that maybe someone is nice to us, then our whole version of ourselves change. Even if there's nothing that actually physically changed, it's just the way that we believe the world is looking at us. So I think that's just a really great message to show for a lot of girls out there that your worth does not come from the way other people treat you. It all comes from within.
The other thing, I remember when I was writing that scene, partially it was because I grew up feeling so awkward and ugly as a teenager, and I felt like if I was at the school for good, I would have been the Agatha, being like, this place sucks, like whatever, But at the end of the day, she needed that school to get that thing. You know what I mean? Like, she went in there and like she could say it sucks all she wants, but at the end of the day, in order to find herself, she needed it. And I feel like, I made fun of Disney princes and princesses all the time because I felt like I never looked like them, I never felt like them. But at the end of the day, I wanted that confidence, that thing they had, the thing we were talking about, that all three of us want. And ultimately, the School for Good, I think, I created it in order to have that fantasy universe that I could have gone into to get that confidence, to have that Agatha moment in them. I remember writing that, this is a funny story about that mirror scene. I wrote it, and originally Debbie gave her a makeover. And, or in my head she was going to. And so when Agatha goes to the mirror and turns, I was about to write the passage being like, oh, and then she turned and she had done all this stuff to her and everything. And I was like, oh wait, nothing happened. So I hadn't even thought of it until that moment. And only in that moment I think I had the realization for myself at the same time that the character had it. And it was this super powerful moment. I think it was one of the few times I cried when I was writing a scene, because I remember it being very like deep and emotional, realizing like, oh wait, why does she have to change? So yeah, that was a moment. All right, two more, and then we'll go. Okay, you in the sweater. Yeah, right there.
When I first read the book, I loved Sophia personally. I remember sitting in the corner in like the middle of in fourth grade, just sitting in the corner reading the book, getting fully for liking Sophie.
Yeah.
Why do you think people do like Sophie? Because I remember
That's a good question. Do you want to answer that one first? Why do you think people, don't like Sophie at first, or why don't they like Sophie in general?
She's hard and she's tough and she's intimidating. I think intimidation, when people are intimidated by somebody and their confidence or the way that they put themselves forward, people often don't like them. I feel like that sometimes. So I'd say she's really intimidating. It's the first reason people probably don't like her. She's also mean to the sweetest, character that everybody really relates to. That's probably why people don't like her in the book. In the movie, I try to make her all of that sass and confidence and intimidating that she is in the book, but I also, I want you guys to like her. I don't want, what book did you say it took for testing for people to stop wanting Sophie to die? What book was that? By the fifth book. Okay, well, I'm hoping by the end of the first movie, you guys will love Sophie. Yeah.
And I think the other thing is that the mandate for her was to create a Disney princess who knew she was meant to be a Disney princess. A Disney princess who wanted to be a Disney princess. And all of a sudden that makes them unlikable, because female ambition somehow is, that's it. And so it was based on the fact that I grew up idolizing Madonna. And I felt like people hated Madonna because Madonna had the ambitions of a man. And I wanted a female character who just wanted what she wanted and had no apologies, right? So yeah. All right, last one. What are we gonna do? Yeah, tell us. Oh, good question.
Is it across the street?
Yeah.
I haven't seen that thing yet, but there's like a display. Yeah, we're gonna go. All of them. Like I remember my first fitting that I had when we were in London for pre-production. I turned to Renee, the head of wardrobe, and I said, I don't think I can do this movie because I love all of these dresses. And like literally the first scene I had, one of the first scenes I had to film, I had to be in this beautiful pink floral dress. And I had to act like I hated it, but the whole time I'm like, ah! Like this is my dream. Like I've always fantasized about being a princess and wearing all the dresses and finding the prince, and so getting to have all of that and then act like I hated it was so difficult. But I think specifically I really loved these two dresses that I wore that are barely in the movie now, but they were kind of inspired by Bridgerton. I don't know if you guys have seen that show. Yeah, so good. Yeah, and so the neckline of the dress is like kind of square, and then the sleeves are puffy, and both of the dresses look quite similar, but no, that was the Trial of Tales one. You have so many good ones too. But yeah, I just really like those dresses because they felt so feminine, but they also were so comfortable, and like I felt like I could frolic in a field for hours in it, and I begged to take it home, but they did not let me.
I love all of my costumes, including the potato sack. And it was like it was right at the beginning of shooting that she was wearing these gorgeous things, and I was wearing this sack that I wear when I first get to the school. But I make up for it with a pretty epic fashion montage. I don't know if you guys saw, they released it on Instagram. And I think in the part that they released, you can see it. There's this, all of our costumes were handmade, custom built for all of us with all these beautiful custom fabrics and stuff. But there's this one piece, it was actually an antique piece, and it has these pointy shoulders and these little buttons that go all the way down, and it's black, and these shoulders just go up, and it's long sleeve, it's super Victorian and Gothic and awesome. I'd probably keep just that corset if I had to choose one item. I did actually keep the bloomers that went under my Gavelton dress, though I stole them. Because there was 10 pairs. Paul's looking at me like, what are you doing? There was 10 pairs, I just took one, jeez.
That was the world's best scene to write. I think I rewrote it 100 times, the fashion montage scene, because I didn't want to move on. It's just so much fun to write. Here's the clothes. All right. Well, we have a special guest with us here today to join us for the signing. Our amazing director, Paul Feig. So is there one chair? The one right there? Perfect. And so Paul's going to join us for the signing. Does anyone have a question for Paul? Anything they're dying to know about the movie? Yeah, go for it. Yeah, anything oh yeah, go for it.
So when I first heard that you were directing the movie, so now that I heard this place for the last sequel, did you ever come back?
Oh, just saying, I created a show called Freaks and Geeks, and she's a fan. Thank you, by the way. I don't know. I mean, she's wondering if there would ever be a sequel or anything to that. I'm not sure. I'm very much into the idea of like you get something perfect and then you just walk away from it and don't go back to it. Also, I mean, I wouldn't want to do it with the cast now because I feel like any of those kind of like later in life sequels are always a little underwhelming. Maybe a reboot. Yeah, I mean, it's always possible. I mean, when I created that show, I was much closer in age to when I remembered high school and all that. Now, being young is so different from what I experienced that I would have to bring in, a lot of people to write it just because I wouldn't be able to, give you the true experience that you want. But the funny thing is that, so many people when they see I directed this movie, because I do a lot of movies like Bridesmaids and these big kind of R-rated comedies, and so people are like, oh, we never thought you'd do a movie like this, but I say this is just Freaks and Geeks with magic. So that's all I look at it.
So how difficult was it to adapt like The World is Full for Good and Evil, which had like Soman as a historian for so long, into your own vision?
Yeah, the question is how hard was it to adapt? It was very hard to adapt. I mean, you guys struggled with it for 7 years before it even got to me. Yeah, I mean, Soman's such an inventive author that there's so much stuff in there that literally, like you said, it would cost $1 trillion if it'd be like a 20-hour long thing. So what you had to do is really find the key moments that tie the story together in the most emotional way, give you the fun that you want, but really it's all about those characters. And you know, and when I came on board and started doing the rewrite, I was constantly talking to Soman, basically saying like, what the fans want, what would they be sad if they didn't have. And I will say that your favorite scene in the book about being transformed, we actually shot that. And it's so beautiful. And I'm gonna try to have it put out as a deleted scene because you and Carrie are so amazing in the scene where she basically says, I'm not pretty enough. And it's just wonderful. We had so much movie and it just didn't, for some reason, when you're putting a movie together, it's a real straight line. And anything that kind of takes a deviation tends to get pushed out, especially since the movie was coming in about 3 hours long at that point. So we got it down to like 2 hours and 15 minutes long. But I want everybody to see that because you and Carrie just are incredible, incredible.
All right, well, let's, because I know all of you want your stuff signed, so it's gonna be, we better start. Everyone's gonna sign your books and everything like that. Once you get to me, I can only do 3, but I can do, if you guys have 3 books, I can do that. In terms of photos, Rachel, do you want to explain how it's gonna go? Okay.
Speaking of photo, I would actually love it if I could get a photo of you guys with everybody. Would it be possible to have you guys stand right here in front of it and face me? And everybody in the audience, hold up your books super, super high. Ooh, it looks so pretty. All right, guys, let's squeeze in. Oh, trust me, you can see their books. Awesome. Okay, I got it. Thank you guys so much. All right, so we will have a bookseller here. Can you turn on the music? We will have a bookseller here to take photos for you. If you can have it ready on the camera app when you get up to the front, that would be lovely. We're going to start 1 row at a time. So row 2, if you guys can stand up, we're going to line you over here. And we'll bring you up to the table to get your stuff signed.